All right, welcome back to Waste Some Time with Jason Green. I am Jason Green, bringing you brand new interviews right here on YouTube. Uh, there's that "Where Are They Now" file, and then there's also the bands that probably should have made it and didn't. And we've heard the legends of those bands. Grew up in New York City, there was plenty of bands that just never got that extra push. Some of them got signed, but didn't go further than that. Some never even got signed, and it wasn't until the invention of the internet that we were sort of able to find some of these bands that we talked about that sort of became folklore. The Throbs is one of those bands. If you lived in New York City in the late 80s, early 90s, you knew the band. You saw the flyers, you saw the guys around town, you heard the buzz. But how come it didn't become more? Well, that's one of the questions that we're going to ask Ronnie Sweetheart today. Discuss the past of the band, the Throbs. I'm always happy to turn people on to new music, and it's interesting, new, old music. And it's amazing how many people find bands now on their own, but also find out what might be in store for the future. We'll talk to Ronnie Sweetheart right after this. Just wanna waste some time with you. Sometimes it seems too good to be true. Nobody I'd rather waste time with than you. All right, please welcome Ronnie Sweetheart.
Oh,
There he is.
hello,
How
you
are you?
two
Good to
guys.
see you.
You too, Jason.
It's funny. So we got to go back. We were introduced by Mark Weiss, and
Correct.
the reason was there was this viral picture of a guitar player. Well, we didn't even know it was a guitar player, but everybody was guessing who this person is. And they were saying it's Brian Forsythe and it's Kelly Nichols and it's Warren DeMartini or it's Joan Jett. That was my favorite. They didn't even get the gender correct. And Mark Weiss said, "Well, I took that photo." And I said, "Well, great. Come on my show and reveal it," because it had become sort of a viral Facebook, Instagram thing. Who is this guy in the photo with Tony Katane? So Mark comes on my show. He put it off twice. On the second one, he reveals that he doesn't know who it is. And it was like it was Al Capone's vaults for Geraldo all over again. We had nothing. And then he goes, "I'm going to work harder." And he went through his old text messages. And he said, "I think I got two guys who were in a band with him." And so we brought Bart from Smash Gladys and yourself. And we revealed that the person in the picture was, in fact, Roger Erickson, who is
Right.
in both of your bands. And it made for a fun little video. A lot of people watch it. This is the picture that was
Yeah.
in question that everybody discussed. Now, when you saw it, you knew it was him right away, didn't you?
Yeah, definitely.
Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, just the boots, the hair. There was another picture that came out at the same time as this that I think you could actually see his face better. I can't really see that. And he had a
This
cigarette in his
one's
mouth.
this one's the outtake. There is one where he's got the cigarette in his mouth, and you do see more
Right.
of his face. But it was funny that a picture like this would would go viral. I remember I messaged Danny, Throbs bass player, on Instagram, and I said, "Is this Roger Erickson?" And he said, "I think so." And I said, or "I believe it is." And I said to you last time, stranger thing is that Danny Nordahl is on Instagram and responding to people's messages. I mean,
Right.
who the hell would have ever thought that that was a thing? So we got to chatting a little bit about that picture, and then chatting about Throbs, and it really, as I said in the introduction, is one of these bands that it just didn't happen. And there was a lot of bands getting signed, and there was a lot of bands getting screwed. We're going to ask you if it's a combination of those things in just a minute. But I want to go back first. You're from Canada originally, so uh, and you started in the music business young. So tell me, what was it like growing up, and what got you into music?
Actually, listening to the Ramones really got me into music. I mean, I had an older brother. He was into rock and stuff like that. Um, got introduced to the Ramones. I got to see the Ramones so many times in Canada and Toronto. But I was always into music. I was this mullet punk rocker guy. Had a tailcoat with all punk pins on it and everything in school. I always stood out in high school, you know. But I think my first band was actually in high school. I think we were called A Piece of Tail. and it was just for shits and kicks, just to do something. But yeah, then got to play in some great punk bands in Toronto. Played with the Vile Tones for a couple shows. Then we formed the Throbs in Toronto. Those guys from Hamilton, so we got to play quite a bit around Toronto and Hamilton and whatnot. We actually opened up for Mike Monroe and the Secret Chiefs at I think it was Lee's Palace or something like that in Toronto, which was pretty cool. I mean, I was a big Hanoi fan also, but yeah, the original Throbs really started back in Toronto
It's
back in the
funny
day.
you would go from Toronto to New York. Now, before you start Throbs VO5, you played guitar, and that's the band with Sebastian Bach. And Sebastian had talked about you in his book. He'd always talked about you and your look. I think he always thought you had the coolest look. And now that was only about 2 shows that you did, right?
I believe it was only 2 shows at Rock and Roll Heaven, yeah, in Toronto. And
You guys were young, but right? How old do you think the two of you were?
uh, I, I was probably just 19. He was probably 18 or something. He was I think still too young to be in clubs like drinking and whatnot. But it's weird that I believe Molly Crew was playing. I think the Garden that night or the night before, something like that. And Nikki Sixx and Tommy Lee actually showed up to one of the shows. We ironically met them in the ladies' room because we always use the ladies' room for some reason. It was less lines or something like that. But we met Tommy Lee and Nikki Sixx in the ladies' room at Rock and Roll Heaven, and then Sebastian had a demo tape of his that he sent to them, and that's what I heard. How Doc McGee got a hold of Sebastian and whatnot, and also, and through Mark Weiss also with the photographer. But yeah, those were crazy times. We were like pretty boys with big hair. VO5, the ultimate hairspray band.
Yeah, the name fit. And
Right.
um, did you think that did you think Sebastian was going to make it? Then did you see like this guy's got something?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, just even rehearsing with him and his voice and his range. Like I think when he got in Skid Row, I think management told him, "No, you know what? Cut that octave out. Don't even go ever sing that high." He's always hit this note on stage that would insanely kill our ears. I mean, it's insane. But yeah, we all knew he was destined to be huge. Definitely,
And
absolutely.
yeah, and it's the famous story. He sang at Mark Weiss's wedding, and I think a lot of guys
Right,
saw him. I think Doc might have been there also. Bon Jovi and
right.
those connections. So Sebastian goes on to have his career, but and also moves to the East Coast. At what point? Now you go to New York first, but I don't think you went to stay, right? Didn't you go and meet some of the guys?
Yeah, I took a road trip from Toronto, I think with 3 girls in a rental car, and we just drove to New York, just going to the Limelight, and I think we were there for like 2 or 3 days, just to party and whatnot. We were young, and I met Danny in at the Limelight. I think it was at a Johnny Thunder show actually, and we just hit it off. And said, you know what, you guys want to start a band? I'll move down here, and then him and Anthony and Pete drove up to Toronto and threw a couple guitars and an amp in the back of his truck and drove my stuff down to New York, and I flew down, and it was yeah history from there. Yeah, we started rehearsing. I was playing music in Toronto for quite a few years, and nothing happened. It's just beating the wall with a stick and not getting anywhere. So actually, going to New York, I was the new kid in town. So you know, we started rehearsing these songs like because I released a Throbs EP in Toronto, a 7-song EP, and it did well in like college charts and stuff like that. But we basically rehearsed those songs and started the band here or there in New York, and it just sort of hit. People got it in New York. Whereas in Toronto, it's just like, all right, well, it's just another band. But I mean, I meant it when I came to New York. I wanted to get it done, definitely.
Yeah, there's a dedication and a drive that you hear about and you see, and some bands had, and some bands uh, didn't. We were talking about going to New York for the first time. Where were you living?
Hotel 17.
Where was
There's a
that?
Third Avenue and 17th Street. It was called Hotel Hell. People used to call it, and you could pay nightly or weekly or monthly. And I think I moved to New York with, like, I think $30 Canadian money in my pocket. I had, I think, two or three guitars, an amp, and I think a Minnie Mouse collection. I used to collect Minnie Mouses.
That's funny.
But
Well, at least you brought the collection with you. Um,
right,
it's interesting because I told you this when we last spoke. I worked at a record store called Revolver Records,
sure,
and it was on 8th Street, 6th Avenue, and it was an upstairs store. And then next to it was a store called It's Only Rock and Roll that were
yeah,
sort of ahead of their time as far as memorabilia and rock stuff. And then CDs and records. Bootlegs was a big thing. People would go
right,
there to get. I remember Mick Jones from the Clash comes in. And he wanted me to show him all these bootleg videos. It was always the same one: Cocksucker Blues, Rolling Stones,
right.
always. And all these famous people would come in, and there was a young woman who worked there named Karen. She worked at It's Like Rock and Roll, and then she came with Revolver, and she was such a fan of the Throbs. And we always had Throbs posters up or flyers for the clubs and things. And I remember becoming familiar with the band. Right across the street from Revolver was Electric Lady, Jimi Hendrix's studio. And then not too far from there was a store called Butterfly, which was a t-shirt store. Nowadays, maybe they call that a head shop. I'm not sure. But
Right.
and I bought my first Ramones shirt there, and that's like
Right.
a life-changing moment. Yeah, I still have the shirt. Doesn't fit as well as it used to.
Right.
But it turns out that Danny was working there. Danny Nordahl, your bass player now in Faster Pussycat, also worked in there, and you would come in and basically hang out, right?
Yeah, I mean, I had nothing to do all day, so I used to go there and either write lyrics and just hang out with Danny. And the owner of the store actually would come by and say to Danny, "Why is your friend always just hanging out here?" And Danny said, "Oh, he's got nothing to do, and he's just hanging out. He's not doing anything." He goes, the owner said to Danny, "So it's all right. He actually attracts people to come into the store because I
Mhm.
had big hair back then, and be hanging outside smoking cigarettes, whatever, and it would attract people into the store. So the owner dug it. He goes, "Yeah, he can hang out here whenever he wants. That's fine." I never actually worked there, so I think
But
the
yeah,
only
when
time,
you were probably seen there, you're a mascot in a sense.
yeah,
Everybody. Um,
I
they were,
remember some people coming in. They were going to do when Kiss unmasked. They were going to do a video for Kiss, and they were looking for spandex and stuff for Kiss. And they were going, "Yeah, we got to squeeze these old men in spandex pants and just shoot a video for them." Well, that was pretty funny.
yeah, no, it's and for those watching who aren't familiar with New York City at the time, maybe they've heard the legends, but uh, there was a scene, and so we're talking around. The Throbs get signed in 1988. So in L.A., the hair metal glam scene is already well underway. Faster Pussycat Guns N' Roses record comes out on the same day in 1987. And so it seems like labels now have to sign something similar. Everyone's looking for the next thing. And every LA band, Jizzy Pearl said on my show, it's like waiting for a golden ticket, and you watch everyone else get the golden ticket, going, "We got to get signed." They're running out of these tickets,
Yeah,
and
take it
so
back.
on the East Coast, a similar thing is happening. Um, I don't think that the East Coast scene ever got the attention that the West Coast scene. Obviously, that Hollywood scene took off, but
Right.
people start getting signed in 1988. You guys get signed by Geffen Records, the same label as Guns N' Roses. And so, were you playing a lot before you get signed? Tell me how it happens.
I think we got a really good buzz on our third live show. Our third live show was actually opening for Nina Hagen at the Ritz,
Mhm.
and there was a buzz about us by this point, just from us hanging out at clubs and stuff. And then, I mean, it was our third show, and we started sort of a war in between labels of who's going to get us and whatnot, um, and yeah, it was our third live show. But I would go out on stage, and I would be bleeding by the time I got off, and I'd be soaking wet with sweat. I mean, it was just like I said. I went out to New York to freaking do it and put my heart into it, and the music we were doing, it was meant something to me, and that's why I portrayed it that way on stage. So yeah, it was our third show, and like I said, opening up for Nina Hagen, that was pretty cool too. I think we'd played the Cat Club was our first show. The second show, I'm not sure exactly where. It might have been a smaller place like Sanctuary. I don't even know if Sanctuary was up and running just then yet. But
The,
yeah, the third show.
these were the legendary clubs at the time. This is the old Ritz before it moved to Midtown. Now it became Webster Hall years later. But and then the Cat Club, which was Don Hill's club on I think 13th Street, right?
Yes.
Um, it was a. These were the places that you went, and you always saw the Throbs at those places, and a few bands that were in town. Circus of Power came to mind. There's a few bands that sort of were on that Smash Gladys that were on that New York scene, and you made a point that a lot of times you didn't see those bands on the same bill because if you had interest and you had a draw, why put them all together?
Right.
Spread them out. But there was something happening, and the Throbs was different then. It certainly wasn't a glam metal band, and so it didn't necessarily fit in with what was happening in Los Angeles. Or would you say?
Yeah, I mean, we were sort of a punk rock band to start with, and then it evolved. I mean, we were a heavy rock band. I mean, good old rock and roll, like the Stones, Aerosmith, um, Guns N' Roses, which we ended up signing with Geffen, and I'm sure we'll get to it. What happened with the record company. I mean, why wouldn't Geffen put us on the road with Guns N' Roses?
It would have seemed like a no-brainer. We're looking at a Geffen promo photo right here. Where was this photo taken? Do you remember?
Oh, geez, probably. We used to try to get our photos taken in restaurants so the record company would feed us. So I'm not sure. That might have been a basement of a restaurant or something.
Smart. I mean, you're thinking ahead. The hustle of
Absolutely. Well, Danny and I used to live on a slice of pizza and all the beer we could drink a day.
Mhm. Danny still lives like that, I think.
Danny still does, yeah.
But
But yeah,
but so
we
anyway,
definitely
yes,
definitely always tried to do photo shoots and meetings at restaurants so we would get fed.
yeah, it's a smart idea, especially when you're struggling and starting out. So what I'm fascinated about, and this happens to a lot of bands, you get signed in '88, but record doesn't come out until '91. So there's a few things.
We
Let's
were
talk.
waiting for the grunge movement.
Yeah, they had a feeling something was coming. But before we talk about what happened with the record release, let's talk about a little bit of the recording of the record because it's a pretty interesting story. When I hear the Throbs, I hear an Alice Cooper influence. I could be crazy, but I think your voice and just some of the style sounds like an Alice influence. Am I right?
Oh, I definitely would say so. I mean, I think Alice Cooper is a big influence on me, definitely. And I didn't never had that high screeching voice everyone was doing in LA and stuff like that. I or even Sebastian Bach. Sebastian's got like we were talking about earlier, such a range. I've got a low register, and so does Alice. But definitely big influence on me, definitely, and the rest of the band. Everyone was totally into Alice Cooper, which leads us to Bob Ezrin.
Yeah, which and Bob Ezrin and Dick Wagner, because Dick
Yes,
Wagner and Steve Hunter, legendary duo, played a lot of Aerosmith and then played a lot of Alice Cooper solos as well. Steve has been on my show before. Dick hasn't since passed, but so you guys want a producer for your record, and you go to the label and ask for Bob Ezrin, right?
yeah, we did. And the label turns around and says, "Well, you're a baby band. We can't afford to give you Bob Ezrin." And so that was it. We did meet up with other producers and stuff like that, and met with them and stuff. But we said we really want Bob Ezrin, so we somehow found out where he lives, and then we were out in L.A. and found out where he lives, and we ended up going to his place with a demo tape. It was pretty early in the morning. We're all like disheveled and stuff like that, coming from a club or something like that. And Bob opens the door and goes, What do you guys want?" We said, "We're a band from New York, just got signed to Geffen Records. We'd love if you produced our album." And he invited us in, sat us down, and listened to the demo. I think he ordered some donuts, bought some donuts for us, made us coffee, and he listened to the demo, and he said, "Yeah, you know what, you guys, I think have something here. I'd definitely like to do it." And we said, "Well, Geffen says we're a baby band; they're not going to pay you that much." He goes, "Well, let me give them a call." So a couple of days later, we get a call from Geffen. "Oh, guess who we got you to produce your album?" And still to this day, I don't think they've realized that we went. I mean, Bob must have said these guys showed up at my door.
Well, I'm
But
sure they were quick to take credit. Look what we did. But
yeah, exactly.
I'm not sure people watching understand how huge Bob Ezrin
Right.
is. It made some of the biggest records of all time. I mean, and so nowadays you probably couldn't get past the gate to get to Bob Ezrin's house.
Right. Exactly.
And if he saw you guys on his
Yeah.
lawn, he's calling the cops.
Right.
But
Exactly.
this is the hustle and the drive that bands had. If we're going to make it, there was no America's Got Talent or any other bullshit. You wanted to make it, you're going to have to go out and prove it. So it's pretty incredible. You get Bob Ezrin, and now Dick Wagner is going to co-produce with him. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah, he brought on Dick to co-produce with him, and we went straight into pre-production. And it's weird. We were in pre-production with the both of them, and we're on some big sound stage and stuff like that. And then Bob and Dick are in the middle of the floor, waving their arms, going, "Hey, stop, stop, stop!" We're going, "What? We thought it sounded great." And he goes, "No, didn't you guys feel that? There's an earthquake going on." I forget what year that was. It must have been 88 or 89, maybe even 90. I'm not even sure. But us on stage, we didn't feel a damn thing. We were going, I guess it wasn't that bad of an earthquake, as we kept playing.
Welcome to California. You guys come
Yeah,
from New York. Where
yeah.
did you record the record?
I believe it was Amigo Studios. I don't know if they're still around.
Mhm.
I believe it was called Amigo Studios.
Where does everybody live during the recording?
Um, well, when we first got here to LA, our business lawyer, lawyer at the time was I'll think of the name in a minute, but he goes ahead and sets us up at the Chateau Marmont.
Wow.
He got us Bungalow 3, where John Belushi had passed away.
You got
So
that
yeah,
actual bungalow?
yeah,
That's crazy.
yeah. We come out here from New York because we were all living in like hotel hells and stuff like that, and then we're in the Chateau Marmont bungalow, which is great for bringing chicks back because you just drive up the back way, and then you had your own little parking spot and your own little bungalow. Is great.
Yeah, very convenient. And you must be thinking, this is it. This is the new life.
Yeah, right.
We're set. We're at the Chateau
Right.
Marmont. We're making a record with Geffen. Bob Ezrin's producing. What could go wrong?
Right.
We're going to find out. But what? How long did it take to make that record?
um, it really didn't take that long because we had pretty much all the songs together, and pre-production. They didn't really change a whole lot. Maybe a couple drum beats and stuff like that, but the structure of the songs all pretty much stayed the same. So I'd say we were done in a few months, actually.
And so one of the stories that I liked was you're playing an Alice Cooper song, and Bob Ezrin says he thinks it's a good song, and that maybe you guys should record it. Do you think he didn't even realize that it was an Alice Cooper song that he produced?
Yeah, yeah, he didn't remember the song. Is it my body? I'd like to actually maybe record that. Um, yeah, Dick Wagner realized what song it was. But Bob was going, That's a great song," because we had some free time. We were just jamming on it, and then Bob goes, "That's a great song. should record that, and that could be your first single." We all said no, because we really didn't want to do a cover song and as our first single. In hindsight, we probably should have, but
You're
might
young,
have made
yeah. You're young, and you're it's your music. It means something to you. This is what you
it.
want to do, and you want to be known for that. You've got a lot of experience now. You might look at some decisions differently. So,
Right.
question is, you make the well. Look, and also you're making the record, and a lot of records at the time had cameo appearances on it, guest spots. So, a punk rock band from New York City, who would you expect to be on the record but Little Richard,
Little
right?
Richard Cinnamon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you guys meet Little Richard, and how do you convince him to be on your album?
Well, I think we had moved out of the Chateau Marmont and we were staying at the Sunset Hyatt then. Um, After we trashed the bungalow, had to put that in there. We were young rock stars. We had to trash the bungalow.
Mhm.
We dearly paid for that. So yeah, we were in the Sunset Hyatt in the elevator, and Little Richard gets on the elevator. I think it was Danny and I, and we said, "Oh man, we're out here doing a record with Bob Ezrin and Geffen Records. And we'd love if you'd play piano on one or two of the tracks." And he said to us, "It'd be a lesson and a blessing, boys, to play on your record." So we just kind of hit it off. He liked Danny's furry boots. Danny had like leopard boots, fur boots on. And he liked Danny's furry boots. But so yeah, we struck up conversation with him in the elevator, and that's what he said. It'd be a lesson and a blessing. I believe last time he said that was to Jimi Hendrix.
Wow. Well, and now do you have to go back to the label, or you have to go back to Bob Ezrin and go, look, I think we got Little Richard?
Yeah, we had to go back to the label, obviously, because obviously we're going to have him paid for his session work, and we had to get him a limo. He was always kind of late because he had a lot of makeup to put on. He put on a lot of makeup. But yeah, we would um, pick him up in a limo and take him to the studio and take him back home afterwards because he was living in the Hyatt at the time. So,
I've told the story before about Scotty Hill from Skid Row being on the road, and they're in a hotel, and Little Richard lived nearby, and he would call the hotel and ask what rock stars were in town or who was famous, and he would go through and call people. He sort of
that's
he was
great.
an interesting character. Now, so he agrees to play. What do you do? Do you give him some demos to listen to? Does he hear it in the studio? How does he hear the music?
I believe we set up two songs for him to choose from to play on one, and he ended up playing on Ecstasy. I believe he hooked up with Bob Ezrin to hear the tracks, in the studio, and so yeah, he ended up playing on Ecstasy. I forget which other. I think it Rip It Up maybe was the other one that he was um, also given to listen to. I believe Bob Ezrin actually plays piano on that now. But yeah, he hooked up with Bob Ezrin in the studio, and then they just went at it. It was great. What
Yeah,
what a
it's
legend! What a legend. I got a picture of him at the piano with the Throbs around him. It's great.
you'll have to send it
Legend.
to me so we could use it put it up here. But yeah, talk about a legendary guest spot and something completely different. So you finished recording the record. Now, why does it take so long for this record to come out?
Well, this is when grunge, I guess, hit, and so they kind of sat on it for a while. We went to a meeting at a great Moroccan restaurant that is no longer here in LA, Dom Maghrib, and we were hanging out with Andy McCoy from Hanoi Rocks at that time. I believe he was starting to play with Iggy Pop, so he was hanging out with us. We were friends, and so we invited him to the dinner. So Geffen calls a band meeting. So we said, let's go let's go to Dom Maghrib so we can eat. And our management's there, our lawyers there, everyone's there. And Geffen basically turns around and says, "Well, the album's out, grunge hit, and but we really have no idea how to market you guys. I mean, well, you have Guns N' Roses on your label. How do you not know how to market us? I mean, put us on the road with Guns N' Roses would be probably the smartest thing to do." And I don't know what ever came out with that. I believe there was a bit of animosity at the time between my guitar player Roger and Izzy Stradling, and Roger's then wife at the time. There's something going on there, and
Well,
there's a bit
I
of
got to ask you more about that because you brought it up briefly in the Mark Weiss thing, and I thought I got to get to the bottom of this a little bit more. Um, that photo that we showed earlier of Roger with Tawny Katane, Tawny Katane was possibly with David Coverdale at the time, and Roger was with someone at the time who later would marry Izzy Stradlin. Were they married or were they dating?
Roger.
No, the girl, did she marry Izzy Stradlin?
I don't know if she ever did marry him. I really don't know. She may have,
But
but
Roger was in all kinds of trouble. It seemed he definitely seems like an interesting character. In fact, we none of us really knew where he was. Bart says he believes he's living in Sweden, where I guess he's from, and supposedly that's where he is. But so he seems like one of these cats who got involved in trouble, and who knows. So the Izzy Stradlin thing. What happened? Because last time you said there might have been some shots fired. I mean,
yeah. I mean, they Izzy and Roger were really good friends. They knew each other for quite some time, but uh, apparently the story goes. I'm not a witness to this or anything. Apparently there's some shots fired in the hills of Hollywood. That's near Izzy's place of residence or where he was staying at the time, and apparently people say it might have been someone in the Throbs or something like that. I
I
don't
wonder
know.
who.
I don't know if any of this was true or not, but these are the stories that I heard. I mean, and then ironically enough, the Throbs are not going on tour with Guns N' Roses at all. So that's that's what that's what happened in my life. It's like, well, they don't know how to market us now. Now what are they going to do? They're
And
not
it's
putting us
crazy
out.
because there were bands that were difficult to market, but I really don't see that the Throbs were. And I think there was a lot of bands like the Cult when Southern Temple came out, and Guns, obviously. But there was other bands that I think would have fit with you guys. And I think that you shot a video at the Palladium in New York, obviously. And when you made the video, did you still feel like, okay, this is going to be big, things are going to go good?
Yeah, we absolutely. I mean, it'd been like I think we had almost a year off the since the album sat and we shot the video. Um, so we shot the video, and then we actually our record release party was at the Palladium also. And by that time, we hadn't played in very much at all, just 'cause we had a time off and we didn't do anything. And there was power outages, and I forgot the lyrics. I suck at remembering lyrics, even my own lyrics. I just suck at it. But yeah, it was still a great show. But it's weird that we played our record release party instead of just playing the album.
And the
But
album, yeah.
that was fun. So at least I could say I played the Palladium. So
Yeah. Well, and so, when you're doing those things, you think, okay, things are moving along. We've got this album, we did this video, we did this record release party. And yes, industry things change. But you guys really, like I said, you guys weren't a hair band. You weren't Poison, and those are the bands that were when grunge comes out. You go, okay, no, we're changing. I really would have thought, and you probably thought too, you could find something to do with the Throbs. Why did they sit on that record so long? Did they ever give you a reason why it was taking so long?
I don't. I really don't know. I think it had to do with something about a movie coming out that they had to see how it was going to do. I really didn't understand it. What that had to do with us putting our album out. I mean, grunge came out and did what it did, and you know what? Just let's put ours out there and throw it and see if it sticks on the wall or not. But yeah,
Looking
I
back,
really don't know.
you must think of all the money you spent, that you had to give back to the record label for videos and whatever other nonsense, and to think at the end of the day, these people have no clue. everyone would give these record companies this, oh, they're genius, they know what they're doing, and
Right.
in actuality, they had no clue. We're looking at the record cover here for The Language of Thieves and Vagabonds, and the question I have is, when I was looking for this record cover, there's a few different covers.
Yeah, this cover here that you're showing. This was an actual painting. It's only like 5 by 7 um, big, and it was done by Richard Dadd, which I believe he painted this while he was in a sane asylum for chopping up his family or something like that. Something strange like
Naturally.
that.
Mhm.
Yeah, naturally. But we just love the artwork of this, and it it's the language of thieves and vagabonds. It's there, Every time you look at it, you see a new little figure and stuff like that.
Mhm.
But yeah, there was other covers, I guess, for promotional things and whatnot. Um, so yeah, one was just like green or something like that, and just said DGC the Throbs in like a stamp print, which was kind
Mhm.
of boring. But they did what they had to do. We used to go up to Geffen Records and like load our bags up with CDs and stuff like that, and sell them so we could eat and drink.
Mhm. That was very commonplace. You'd hear a lot of bands say, "Go up to the label," or if you worked in a record store like I did, it was very common to see guys from bands go, "Okay, I'm turning in these CDs."
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
It was definitely,
Exactly.
at
Yeah.
least in New York City. I'm sure that the same was happening um, in Los Angeles. So
Yeah.
record comes out, and you did go over to Europe. And it's
Yeah.
funny that your tour manager, what a crazy thing is, Richard Cole, who tour managed for Led Zeppelin. He worked a long time with a lot of bands. How do you guys find out that he's going to be your tour manager?
We kind of sought him out also because we thought, you know what, let's have the biggest guy do it. So we sought him out, um, which was great. I mean, I remember like getting off the bus and stuff like that in London and stuff like that or something, and girls would be running towards us. We're going, oh, check this out, guys. We're like the Beatles. They'd run right past us and go to Richard Cole. Oh, hey, aren't you Richard Cole? It was great. I mean,
Richard
he's
Cole was like Duke Fame, and you guys were
yeah,
like Spinal Tap. They ran right past you to get to an English legend. And
right.
what's crazy is you're about to play a show, I believe, at the Marquee, and who shows up?
Who shows up? Let me think. Oh, Robert Plant. Yes, yeah,
That guy.
Robert Plant was it. Yeah, and he showed up just as we're going on stage. So Richard Cole introduces me to him, and he's a tall, tall guy. So I look up and I go, "Great! Now I have to go on stage and sing." He goes, "You'll do fine. I'll see you after the show." So that was really freaking cool as hell. Robert
It's
Plant.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
it's it's great. Yeah, amazing. And this is one of the things about bands. So the bands that got huge, we can watch documentaries and hear these stories. But to me, sometimes it's much more fascinating about the bands that were there, did the work, and were this close. But there's so many legendary stories, and we're just scratching the surface. There's so many the characters that you've come across. When I was in New York, I'm a little bit younger, but my father had a business in the East Village, and on a regular basis, he would say, "Oh, that's Cheetah Chrome," or "That's John Spacely." These are all kind of New York characters, Johnny Thunders,
Right.
and everyone kind of knew each other, and there was this thing. And Joey Ramone. I mean, you could walk by Joey Ramone's building any day of the week that he was home, and probably see him in the lobby brushing his hair,
Right.
or touching, going back and touching the door with his obsessive compulsive
Yeah.
disorder.
Yeah.
And so all of these things, and these are characters that will come in and out of your life and your band's life. And I had on a Brit from NY Loose, Danny's one of Danny's bands, and she was telling me she dated Dee Dee Ramone. She was probably 16 at the most,
Right.
and she told these stories about when Dee Dee Ramone was at home, and he said, "If I don't get there, he's going to kill himself." And
Shit.
and I didn't know what to do, so we called Chris Stein, and Chris Stein and Deborah Harry had to go over. I mean,
Wow.
the Punk
Crazy.
Rock
Yeah.
Hall of Fame is happening on 8th Street
Yeah.
at this
Exactly.
point. And I don't know how long it's been since you've been in New York. I was just there recently for the first time in a while. The Limelight. has a pizza place in it now. Do you know
Okay,
this?
yeah, I heard it. I heard about it on social media. Yeah, it's crazy.
It had a gym in there for a little while. I didn't get to see the
Right.
gym, but now there's a lot it's called Limelight Pizza. But when you get in there, it's Grimaldi's. That's what it really is. They just
Oh,
put a
okay.
different because I started looking at the food. I go, I feel like we've been here before, and it's funny to see. I made a record for my punk band, and we had a lyric: "CBGB's is a fucking clothing store," talking about which it
Right.
is. You know,
Yeah.
it's John Barbados. But then I said, "So wait a second, CBGB's is a clothing store, and the Limelight is a pizza place.
The place. Yeah.
What what is happening in this world?" But how do you find out you guys are getting dropped?
Uh, how do we find out we're getting dropped? I don't even remember. I think we got a phone call. I think we were in Arizona, playing in Arizona somewhere, and there was talk about us getting dropped. And I think we were at sound check in Arizona at the Mason Jar, and the lights were on the stage, and I picked up my mic stand and I just threw it off the stage. I was pissed, and I just left building and went and got my hair dyed, actually, just because I was so pissed. Um, I come back later. They find me. I come back later, and apparently the mic stand had hit some guy, like the light guy, in the head or something like that. And I was so sorry, man. I didn't see you down there and stuff like that. But I think that's how. I think we got a phone call while we were on the road, and so the band just kind of did their own thing. We just went on a desperation tour on our own. We just went back to the clubs that we had just played to, like, play them again without anyone knowing that we got dropped, so we would be able to get back into these clubs and play them again. But then that was pretty much the downfall of everything.
These labels seem to have no tact. I can't tell you how many bands I heard were on tour or on, with a major band or whatever, and then get the news.
Right.
So you say it's downhill from there. What happens next? Everyone goes their own ways?
Um, we all kind of kept going. Like I said, we did this desperation tour for probably another month across America. Um, then we got back. We changed drummers. Then we were playing up in Connecticut, and they ended up taking on another singer and not even telling me. I've seen that we were playing some club in New York, so then I found out they had another singer. So I went to the club, went up to the front of the stage, and put $1 in his pants, and I said, "Here, you're going to need this." And
Yeah, yeah,
that,
actually, right, yeah.
that was the end for me. Once they did that, I mean, it was my band and my name. So
Well, that brings me to since we're talking about you getting screwed, we might as well bring this up. If you go online, there's a something called Second, which is allegedly billed as a Throbs album,
right.
but to my knowledge, you have nothing to do with it.
Nothing at all. I had sang some of those songs prior on demos, but that's a different singer on there.
And
It,
so,
it,
how does
there's
that
not a
happen?
problem. They were called the Vibes. I don't know why they used my name on that album. I guess hopefully to sell it better or something. I believe Dick Wagner actually produced that. I
And
really don't
so,
know. I just got pissed off when I seen that come out. I believe that was Rogers doing. So
Rogers self sabotaged quite a bit. Um, it's too bad OJ didn't find out about the Tony Katane. Would have settled it. I'm just kidding. But yeah, the it's crazy. You find out when it's done and it's coming out. And here's the thing: this is my legacy too.
yeah, I mean, I didn't even know that was coming out or that they were using my name, or else I would have tried to stop it. I mean, I knew they were playing around as the Vibes, so I don't know why they wouldn't use that name. I mean, why hang on the coattails of the Throbs if it's not the Throbs, you know?
Every
So
now and then, the Throbs reappears. Now it's you and Danny Nordahl.
yeah.
Um, have you ever asked Danny what the hell happened with that?
Um, mm, no, I mean he basically says it's all Rogers doing. Danny sort of takes himself out of all the business part of stuff. He's wants to play bass and drink Budweiser. and
Yeah,
you know,
it's
so,
non-confrontational, to say the
right,
least. Yeah.
exactly. So I didn't even bother getting into it. I'm sure I did when I first heard about it. I said, well, why would you guys use the Throbs name? And he goes, it was all Roger's doing and stuff like that. Even actually, Language of Thieves and Vagabonds was re-released with a couple extra tracks on it,
Mhm.
and Roger did all that from Europe too. He didn't ask us anyone about doing it or what tracks to put on it and stuff like that. So you
I
know,
wondered about that because there's two different tracks on that version. Where did those tracks come from?
those were old demos, I guess,
Did you see
before
any
that.
money for this deal? Probably not.
No, no,
I mean, the only good I can say about some of these things and Spotify is that all of a sudden younger people are finding this music,
right,
and I'm
right,
it's crazy. Yeah, you have a daughter. I think she's probably about 18 years old now.
correct, yes.
And she's a rock fan, and she plays the guitar. Was she a fan of the Throbs? Did you turn her on to your music?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, she loves the Throbs. She knows the lyrics probably better than I do.
Mhm. You can take over
and
one day.
and I've been doing a lot of writing lately, so um, she hears me yelling and screaming in my little studio room here. So but she's totally into like punk and rock and roll now. She likes Red Cross a lot, and she's total rocker now,
Yeah,
which is
it's cool when your kids can appreciate the same things you do. You have to sit
yeah,
there and hope that she's not going to be a fan of. I can't think of the worst thing on the radio right now, but there's plenty. Uh,
right,
you can't you can't go wrong with rock
right.
and roll. And so before we talk about the future of the Throbs, which I am fascinated in, and I think a lot of people will be excited, but what were you doing all those years? To the general population, we lost you for a little while.
Yeah, you know what? I just kind of really took myself out of music altogether. I I played in a couple other bands, Bad Bad Barbie with Jimmy Bones from Skin and Bones. Um, did a couple projects back in New York, but I kind of really took myself out of the music scene, and I went back to my basics. I'm a trained chef, so I went back to cooking and being beat up in a kitchen. For some reason, I put it back upon myself. But I mean, I love cooking, so I did that for quite a few years, and just sort of settled down, created another family, and you know, slowly got back into music again. Especially when I moved out here to LA again. Um, hooked up with Danny. Danny said, "Well, let's put the band back together." I said, "Yeah." So I'm not really interested in doing like long tours or anything like that. I'd like to do some shows here and there, but we are starting to write some stuff, which is really cool. And
Yeah, you
you know,
played a few shows. You and Danny played some shows at the Whiskey, and the two original members were you and Danny Nordahl. And then whoever was in Faster Pussycat at the time, they changed members. Chad Stewart's been there forever, but they would play with you guys, and it was fun. And you would be on bills with bands like Circus of Power and bands that were also part of that scene and that vibe. And young people getting their first chance to see the Throbs or anything even close to it. And so the buzz has been building, and you guys
yeah,
are active again. As you said,
yeah.
you're not going to go tour the world, but there'll be some shows. And now you've said you've begun to write again, which is exciting. And so tell me how that starts to happen.
Well, I mean, like you said, I'm using Fast Pussycat's band because Danny's part of Fast Pussycat. Um, well, it started when Ace Von Johnson was in the band. Um, he had a couple licks and stuff like that. Now Sam Bam Colton is in the band, amazing guitar player, I have to admit, both of them. But Sam had a few ideas and stuff like that, and I had a few guitar ideas. I still play a little bit of guitar, not very poorly though. So I just started writing some lyrics for these things, and some of them just really clicked. And ironically, it sounds like the Throbs, not just because of my voice, but just the feel of and the vibe of the music. Sam's an amazing guitar player where he he'll give me something. He goes, "Oh, I stole this from the Throbs." So here's a new song, but that I stole from the Throbs, which is great. It's brilliant, right?
Yeah, what's Throbs influenced,
Right.
and so I mean, you don't have a timeline. Where do you think it's at? You just write and see what happens next.
We've got about 10 songs demoed right now.
Mhm.
I'd like to get a few more because I'm not crazy about a couple of songs. This one song's been beating me to the ground. I think I've written 7 different lyrics for it. And I seen Sam at the Rainbow the other day. He goes, "You know what? We'll write a couple more and then take our pick from there. Um, and then we'll see what happens." There's Chad says there's some interest of someone financing it for us, and I believe Gilby Clark's interested in producing it for us and recording it for us. So that's where we're headed, and hopefully, obviously, I got to work around their schedules. Sam's in Dorothy, he's in um, Fast Pussycat, and many other bands. So I got to work around their schedules. Also, they have that cruise coming up that they do every year.
I'll
So,
be there. Yeah.
oh, you going on that?
Mhm.
Cool. Have a good time.
Yeah, thank you. I'm doing both. I'm doing the '80s cruise, and then which Faster's doing, and then I'm doing the Monsters of Rock cruise after, which they're also doing. So it's
Okay.
like 12 or 13. But the Throbs is a band that next year could be on one of these cruises. Those
Yeah.
cruises and festivals are always looking for bands from the scene that they haven't been able to get before. People want to see something that's rare and that's back together. I want to talk a little bit about this. Will be a quick "Where are they now?" because we kind of know the answers. We know that Roger Erickson isn't coming back. I
Right.
think I think that's official. I'm putting up a picture of the band. Um, what about Ronnie Magri? What is he up to?
I believe he's still in New York now. I believe he's DJing at
Mhm.
clubs. I haven't talked to him in probably a couple years now.
There was never any thought of saying, "Hey, let me have him come do some of the throbs," either.
I had did some throb shows back in New York with him back quite a few years ago with Jimmy Bones on guitar, and with Ronnie on drums, and this guy Kurt was on bass. I did a few shows, throb shows with him back in the day. Um, but then, you know what? Uh, Chad's a great drummer. He's a great vocalist, and we get along. That's a really good
That
thing.
says I think that says a lot, and convenient. You guys are all together nearby. Those guys all play together. Chad and Danny have certainly become a tight rhythm section,
Yeah.
and Chad has the perfect drum kit in case Danny wants to fall through it.
We all know that.
Let that one of the most viral moments in the
Right.
history. Um, so it's exciting, like I said, to see new Throbs music. I hope to see some more live shows. Hope another whiskey show. I've always been traveling when you play, and I want I want to be able to come see you and hear these songs. And I think if anything comes out of this interview for somebody who maybe wasn't familiar with the Throbs, who was maybe go listen to the music,
Of
go listen
course.
to these songs, and see what you missed. Sometimes there's a whole world of great music out there that people have no idea it's there, and I think and now it's a click away. It's
Right.
all it is
True.
to get familiar with that album, and I think people will be hooked. I believe me. I live with somebody who's 27 years old and listens to the Throbs constantly. I feel like you and I are talking every day because every time I get in the car, I hear the Throbs, which I love
I
because
love to hear that.
when I lived in New York City, I could not have guessed that in 2025 I would be hearing the Throbs and seeing young fans.
Yeah.
You go to the shows and you see them. They want
Yeah.
something different. People
Yeah.
can discover music for themselves now. When we were there younger, MTV chose what you get, and the radio chose
Yeah.
what you get. And if
Yeah.
you were lucky enough, you stumbled into the right club. Now it's there, and if you want something that's authentic, and when I say authentic, I mean how many bands can say they played, the Throbs and the Dead Boys? Was that at the Ritz?
Yeah, that was at the Ritz. Throbs, Dead Boys, and Red Cross.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't get much more authentic in punk rock
Right.
than a bill like that. So
Wonderful.
I'm glad that, look, at the very least, I'm glad Roger Erickson was in that photo so that I was able to talk to you
Yeah,
and get you on here and spread the word. One of my favorite parts about doing this is
right on.
spreading the word on things that maybe people missed or just were too young. And
Right.
uh, and now there was a time when people played their instruments and wrote songs and you know
Right.
uh,
Yeah,
and played live music. So,
yeah.
well, I where is there anywhere people can check you out, Ronnie, or is nothing really yet? Just social media.
Well, nothing really yet, just the regular social media and stuff like that, you know. But I'll post stuff on Facebook when it's ready to come out, and probably on YouTube and stuff. So
Well, people
definitely
stay tuned. You guys write, and when there's a record and something to promote, you'll come back and we'll talk about it again.
sounds good.
Thank you, Ronnie. I appreciate it. I look forward to seeing you.
All right, Jason, be good.
Okay. And thank you, everyone, for watching. We'll see you in the next video.